slide back
Oh.
just the camera a little bit here. One of these days, I'm going to have this desk fully set up. This MacBook is like hanging off halfway off the desk.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Soda.
Soda. What the fuck are blueberries?
They're fruits. They're blue. They're berry-like.
This article says, from book bans to blueberries, here's some of the state laws taking effect today.
I was literally just reading that article. The blueberry one is Mississippi. The rest of them are just straight garbage that we're not even going to talk about. But that one in particular is that Mississippi has formally designated the blueberry as its state fruit. The one nice, happy thing out of that whole entire article.
So where's the list of banned books? I kind of want to look at what I should read.
Actually, you know what? I didn't. It's towards the bottom. It looks like school books with sex acts are now banned in Iowa.
Unless they involve family members, right?
Or the Bible, you know.
Yeah. There's no sex in the Bible, Joe. Just violence and stuff.
If that's the one you're looking for, Iowa schools will be required to strip from library shelves any text detailing sex acts under a bill that also prohibits instruction related to gender identity and sexual orientation in public and charter schools through 6th grade.
Jesus.
There's a little more to it, but that's it. It doesn't name any book in particular.
I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah, that's what caught me too. I was like, oh, what books are those? What books are being banned today? Nothing in particular, just a new, rule that if some person doesn't like something, they can report it and have it pulled from libraries and whatnot, because that's always a good idea. Pull information and whatnot because you don't like it. Gee, I wonder where that's come up before. Could it be the Nazis? I figured that'd be a good segue to what we just went and watched.
It would be a great segue.
Talk about.
Yeah, I mean anything to get off of horrific current events.
Right, anyway,
Joe.
Nazis.
Joe, yeah, Joe. What movie did we just go watch?
Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did.
What'd you think?
I've been racking my brain about that since about halfway through the movie, because I actually really enjoyed it. It reminds me more of the third movie.
Yeah.
When compared to any of the other movies. There's a lot of nostalgia that I feel in it, but at the same time, there's this weird like we're getting too old for this shit aspect of the movie that I didn't really care for, but I understand why it's there, because obviously Indiana Jones, all the characters in it, are older now, and they have that old stuff that they have to deal with and whatnot. On a side note, for some reason I thought the actor who played Short Round was going to be in this movie, and I didn't see him at all.
He is not. No. So there was rumors because he was at the premiere.
Right.
But they invited him to the premiere as a surprise for Harrison.
Oh.
And they haven't seen each other since whatever award, or since Disney D23.
Okay.
So it was just more of like a, hey, let's celebrate Indiana Jones. So they brought him out for it. But yeah, everyone's like, oh, because I remember seeing a thing saying, what a weird way to spoil that he's in the movie. And I was like, is he though? Like, is he in the movie? Because I'm pretty sure all the stuff we've seen, other than the fact that, spoiler, Marion actually shows up in the movie, they literally gave us the cameos. Well, cameo, I guess, really is the only one.
Yeah.
Of anybody who was going to be in it. So I mean, it wasn't that big of a shock. I mean, yeah, it'd been cool to see him, but also like, at what capacity would he be in it, and like blah blah blah, right? Because like, going towards the story, it makes almost no sense for him to be in it. Now they did, in a way, mention him.
Yeah.
Because they said, "Who's your new boy?"
Yeah.
Speaking
And
of the gentleman's in it.
Essentially picked up, what's her name's character essentially picked up that kid in the same way
Yeah.
that Indy picked up Short Round, literally, with he was being pickpocketed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I thought that was a cool callback
Yeah.
to him. But yeah, I was kind of like waiting for, I don't know, I guess he doesn't really need to have a cameo, but like Sala was in it as just a way for Indy to get from one place to another.
Yep.
I would have thought that they could have put him in there for like something like that. Maybe he's an airplane pilot or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Anywho,
so a little bit disappointing on that, but that reminds me. Antonio Banderas was in this movie, right? Did I miss him, or am I just being stupid?
you're being stupid. He was the one-legged scuba diver.
He was the one-legged scuba diver?
Yep. The captain of the boat.
I didn't recognize him at all. At all.
Yeah, once he popped up, I was like, Antonio Banderas. I think that would have been like a bigger thing in the movie.
Person to actually say that, Indiana Jones, and I actually don't know the actress's name that plays
Phoebe Waller-Bridges.
Phoebe Waller-Bridges. You could even include whoever the actor that played the kid too, and then obviously you have Mads Mikkelsen. Can't forget about him.
Boyd
then,
Holbrook.
Yeah, you're like Antonio Banderas. It's like, oh fuck, what?
Yeah, I legit didn't know.
Is that the other guy's name? I kept the lead henchman guy.
Yeah, Lloyd Boyd Holbrook. It's funny because James Mangold directed this, and he was the villain from Logan.
Yeah.
But also he's the dude from
He's Carpathian.
Carpathian from
Yeah.
Sandman. Yeah.
I kept staring at him, and I'm just like, I know you from somewhere, and it bothered me.
Your eyes don't look the right way, but yeah.
Yeah, and that's probably
'Cause you
what I
have
just
them.
didn't recognize. Like, he didn't have the mouth eyes, and so I didn't go, oh, you're the Carpathian. That's right.
Yep.
But there was just something about his general look that I was just like, I know you from somewhere, and then the action would kick in. Just that part of my brain just went, action, yay,
Yay.
yay. So yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. It is very much a callback to the other good Indiana Jones movies. The first one, the third one. They even mention the second one where he quips that you've never drunk the blood of Kali or whatever, or
Yep.
something like that. So I thought that was pretty funny. I thoroughly liked that they got rid of a lot of the stuff that they were building with the
Crystal Skull.
Crystal Skull. I was trying to remember which number it was. Fourth one?
Fourth one, yeah.
Because one of the things that I hated that they started doing in that movie is they turned it more into like Professor Jones, where something would happen and he's like, well, quicksand is blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Like, that takes you so out of the movie. Stop doing that. And they completely got rid of that here. So it felt more like an Indiana Jones movie. And even to a certain extent, it almost felt like they just kind of erased the fourth movie. They don't mention it at all in this, as far as I'm aware.
What do you mean? The Crystal Skull?
Did they even make reference to the Crystal Skull in this movie? Because they make reference to, obviously, the second one. The Nazis are another thing from the first and third movie as well. I'm trying to think. I mean, I guess they don't really make clear references to the other movies like they do for the second one, but there's just something weirdness about it to me that just it made it feel like the third one or the fourth one just almost didn't happen, even though I know it probably did. It just takes place after it.
Well, they did mention his son.
Oh, that's right. They did mention Mutt.
Yeah, they mentioned his
They
son.
didn't call him Mutt. They just said
He calls him his son. Yeah. And that
So I
basically
forgot about that. Yes.
gives you the backstory of where Indy's at now and how he's, because you can tell he's like this shell of a human now, and like you kind of get the whole thing, like grumpy old man type thing.
Yeah.
He's retiring. He's basically, you can see he's kind of like, I'm done with everything. I don't know what else to do. Blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
And then he tells Wombat, Phoebe Waller-Bridges' character, kind of like, because she kind of fires back at him, like, like blah blah blah, and he's like, you don't understand. Is like, because she says, who would you go to visit? Would you go I can't remember which, but he's like, I would go back to and
what
tell my son.
past would you change
Yeah.
if you could go back and change the past? And he said he would change
His son
his
enlisting.
son enlisting in the army and essentially dying. They don't mention what war that he fought in at all.
Well, I mean,
That,
it would have to
I
be.
guess, yeah, you're assuming what time period it would be. So what, Vietnam or something like that?
It would have to be Vietnam at that point, right?
Mhm.
Because when we're looking at we're in the 50s at this point, right? Because they're going to the
No.
moon.
It'd be
No,
the-
60s.
Yeah, it'd be the 60s.
60s, yeah, because we went to the moon.
Yeah, it would have been Mutt's time would have been 50s. So
Yeah,
the events of Crystal Skull were like the 1950s. This is 1960s with
atomic bomb. That's right. Yeah,
and the atomic bomb. Yeah, right. Because the atomic bomb again was in the fourth movie.
Thank God they got rid of that.
Yeah. No, I say like it feels like an Indiana Jones movie too. Because again, comparing it to the fourth movie, that was another thing that I had a problem with is that every shot, just the physical look of itself, just didn't feel like an Indiana Jones movie. It just felt like they were trying to do something different, which was interesting and cool, but like it just wasn't Indiana Jones. And that movie tried to do something different, but it just everything that they did different just made it not feel like an Indiana Jones movie. Whereas this, like every way it was shot, the action sequences, the dialogue, everything felt like those classic Indiana Jones movies. More specifically, to me, the third one,
Very much so.
and the first one rather than the second one, because even the second one had a tonal difference of like it was a bit more gory and scary and whatnot. I was completely impressed and dumbfounded by the CG that they did with the face swap. Multiple face swaps. Because you're right, they do like, obviously they start the movie off with a Harrison Ford from the original, he's that young Indiana Jones. And then halfway through the movie, you get a slightly older but still younger Indiana Jones. He's got more wrinkles and whatnot. Absolutely looked fantastic for the most part. There were a couple of scenes where it doesn't quite work out, but I think that's some more of the action sequences, like on the horse and whatnot, because they obviously had a body double when he was riding the horse. The close-ups were pretty good, but the far away stuff seemed to be a little bit not great to me. The only thing that bothered me is it is definitely old man Jones' voice in young man Jones' body, and the lips didn't quite sync up a little bit.
The teeth are what threw me off.
Yeah, there's the only thing about that CG that threw me off. But everything else, including the final battle scenes and everything, were really cool to watch and experience. Nothing too huge CG wise, but still a really cool spectacle to see. Sound and everything standard. It's great to hear that Indiana Jones theme song throughout the movie. I was a little annoyed by Phoebe's character as well. Obviously, that's just the way the character is. She's supposed to be that money grubbing type of like, this is why I'm in it for, type of thing. I was annoyed by that, but it's an annoyed in such a way that character is supposed to be like that.
Yeah. She's what everyone assumes Indy is.
Yes. Yeah.
Like they're always like, because everyone's like, oh, you're doing this to make money, whatever. And like, obviously he's not at all doing that. And you can see because he lives in a shit fucking apartment. And he's a tenured professor multiple times over. Mm-hmm. But yeah. I'm trying to find the name of that fucking giant, huge motherfucker they had in this movie.
The dude. 1 second. I have like a burp that's just not coming up.
Yeah, it was interesting because you see a lot of parallels between Helena and Henry, which is funny because like her name is Helena, and his name is Henry. His real name is Henry. and then obviously like you see the diverging paths. Her
Where
father.
she went to be basically a grave robber, and he is an archaeologist.
Yep. Yeah, she's an archaeologist in study, but also not in practice. Where he is a scholar, like he's the literally the tip of both those things, but the other direction. She's the other end of it, going the other way. But you can see obviously she has a kind heart, because she does take in this pickpocketing orphan,
Right.
and does give him a slightly better everything, but also just kind of brings him into like danger
Yeah.
because he almost died several times just in this movie,
Yeah.
and her
Oh, yeah,
fiance was
definitely.
definitely not sane in the head.
Jesus, the number of people that died in this movie, just like good guys that died in this movie,
On
is
screen,
just
no
so
less.
heartbreaking.
Yeah,
God.
dude.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what I was going to say about. I also did kind of like the backdrop that they put it on, because you obviously could have taken place during any other time in the 1960s, but they put it on the same day as the astronauts were returning from the moon.
Yeah.
And you obviously have the big parade for those guys coming through, and it's that kind of like you have one icon of a time period, which is that like swashbuckling archaeologist type guy. Now we're transitioning into more the hero of the time is your astronauts and whatnot, and it's that you're seeing that even the students themselves, you're coming from all the other movies where all of Indy's classes were always full of people willing to learn. In fact, you have that famous scene where the one girl blinks and it says "I love you" on her eyelids, and there is that infatuation with the romanticism of being an archaeologist and going to exotic places and doing exotic things, and that's something I would say of that time period was the 1930s and 40s and whatnot, was something that a lot of people did. But now you have this transition to more science stuff with the landing on the moon, and now that's going to be the more popular thing. So you see that his class is not even half full, and the people that are there just are barely even awake to it for it. Probably just taking the class as more of a humanities thing as opposed to actually learning archaeology. So there's this like shift in what is the more interesting and thing that is happening at the time. So I thought that was an interesting place to throw the movie, to have the backdrop of the movie. I also like that the fact that we don't. It feels like a very like MacGuffin type thing. Like we're chasing after a thing. It is another one of the movies. I didn't get this much of a feeling in Crystal Skull, because you could have the Crystal Skull as a thing that was there, and you had the effects of the skull, and it was something that was there. Where unlike the other movies, the thing that you were going after was more of a MacGuffin thing until the end. When you're searching for the Ark of the Covenant, nothing really came of it until the end. The adventure was getting there and then finding out what happened. Pretty much the same thing with Temple of Doom. The thing was the Shankara stones being stolen, but you don't really see them until the end of the movie again. And in Indiana Jones, in Last Crusade, Jesus Christ.
Yep.
Obviously, it's the Cup of Christ. It's a MacGuffin that they're chasing after up until the end. Here, you obviously do get a part of it, but you only get that part of it, and you have to follow. They have to follow a map. They have to find the map and go through all of these more interesting things. It was funny because halfway through it, I was like, "Oh, this is really cool," because this feels like an Uncharted movie. But obviously, Uncharted is heavily based on Indiana Jones, so it's kind of a weird thing to think and say, but it was actually really fun. I really enjoyed that part of the story, that you were chasing after something that they were building the myth of this thing as we went along. Again, even though Indy has experienced things, and in this movie he even kind of accepts that he's experienced some weird stuff in the past, that you can't just sit there and say, well, everything must have a spiritual or supernatural thing that's going to actually happen to it, that this clock could literally just be a clock by the end. But he also accepts that it could be something that actually does something because of those few past experiences that he has. But I do, like I said, I do thoroughly enjoy the adventure up to finding the last piece, and then even where we ended was almost bittersweet because Jones wants to stay there back in time, and I get it. Like, he doesn't feel like he belongs anywhere in the future. We've already talked about the fact that that everyone else has moved on. The feeling that everyone else has moved on from archaeology, from studying the past, and wants to now be engineers and astronauts and do future stuff, and he's kind of left behind, so that he just wants to stay where he's at, and then gets his ass knocked out and wakes up like a couple of days later or whatnot in his own bed. I love that everyone laughed at that too, because that was a pretty good punch line. Literally. And then it was a bittersweet ending because Marion comes back, and you get to have that little bit of those little things. Where does it hurt? It hurts everywhere. Where doesn't it hurt? And here. So it was a very bittersweet ending, but it was a good ending. And I don't want them to make another movie with Harrison Ford, or almost would say don't make another Indiana Jones movie at all, because you ended it very well right here.
Yeah.
Our story is done. Don't do anything more with it.
Yeah, and I believe Harrison has said this is his last one.
He said that this is his last one, and I believe him in saying that this is his last one. It's just I know that I haven't read the articles because I am curious. A lot of the articles that I've seen lately, they were panning the movie. The critics didn't seem to like the movie, but I've been trying to I stayed away. I shouldn't say try. I stayed away from reading any of these articles just so I didn't have any spoilers for myself about it. So I do wonder where, what the problems that other people had with the movie are at this point. But also, I had seen an article saying that that there could be other movies going forward. But then again, that could have been just a clickbait article.
Yeah.
Trying to go through, but yeah, hopefully they just end it here.
Oliver Richards is the gentleman's name, the giant human being in this movie.
That is huge.
He is 7'2".
I believe it.
He is the world's tallest bodybuilder.
I thought you were going to say world's tallest bald man.
He was not bald.
I know, that's why I thought it was weird.
Bodybuilder. He is 5 inches taller than the Mountain.
Good Lord.
Yep. And he is where do we go? He was in The Kingsman, the prequel to the Kingsman, the one with Ralph Fiennes.
Okay.
But he's also going to play Crom in the Borderlands movie.
Okay.
So that's pretty dope.
Yeah.
And he was Ursa. I don't know if you've seen Black Widow or not, but he was one of the henchmen in Black Widow. But yeah, that's about it. But yeah, he's a very tall gentleman. Franken Nazi.
Very believable that he could literally, because there are a couple scenes where he just grabs somebody by the throat, just fucking lifts them up, and one-handed, and just hits them against the ceiling. So I very much believe that he could actually do that to some of those people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was that's a big gentleman.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I like so getting back to Indiana Jones. I super enjoyed it, and I was in the same boat as you. As I kept seeing people talking about how like, oh, it's not as good. It's a terrible send off for Harrison, blah blah blah. And I was like, I'm thinking like I legit, dude. I'm going into this morning thinking the worst. I'm like, I just don't want to believe these people because I do hate reviewers in general. Mm-hmm. Critics, I should say, because like literally the name of your profession is to criticize things. So it's a fucking terrible job to have. You should probably be a better person, but you're not. So that's why you're a critic. Anyhow, so I was like, man, but I kept thinking, but all the trailers I see just seems like it's a lot of fun. So maybe it's just going to be a lot of fun. whatever, right? We'll go into it, blah, blah, blah. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was a rip-roaring good time. I liked all the callbacks. I liked the little things I saw, like when they took Indy's stuff out of the Birdwatcher's bag at the beginning. You actually see a photo of Marion.
Yep.
Obviously the hat, the whip, the classic bag that he has everything in. The face swaps, or the digital de-aging was definitely by far the best we've ever seen on anything. Like I said, a little bit of like the mouth stuff obviously just doesn't play true because it's like, again, it's just hard to mimic the nuances, right? And it is an older Harrison Ford doing the voices still, so they probably should have doctored his voice a little bit better. But whatever. But even like the like Mad Mikkelsen's de-aging,
that was actually really good. Yeah,
it was extremely well done. Toby, whatever his name is, that plays his buddy, the Birdwatcher, his de-aging was really well done.
Yeah.
Because again, like to the point is like you see them later. Obviously, like we don't know how long, but they're older, grayer hair, much rougher, and it's like that. It's de-aging, but it's not as much de-aging, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of that, and there's like all these different things. Obviously, you realize like the events of this movie, the beginning of this movie takes place before we ever meet Indiana Jones in the movies.
Yeah,
because this is the height of World War II. Well, towards the end of World War II, and as we know that Raiders of the Lost Ark, that happens, and obviously the Nazis are a thing still. Blah blah blah. So like it's cool to have like that kind of like capsulize it, knowing like, hey, this started before we knew Indiana Jones, and goes forward. Little things like that, but there's like just like you see a picture of Henry Sr. on his desk. There's little things like I was confused because I saw like war accommodations and I was like, I don't understand this because Indy was never in the military.
Never in the war, but that's actually a good point. Something I missed out. I didn't see any of the war accommodations, but they do make mention of it in the fourth movie when he's actually being deloused. I think it is. They're going through that he's a decorated, basically spy.
Yep.
During World War II.
Yeah, so there's like a lot of that stuff. I was like, that's pretty cool. And then like, it plays back again. It just calls back to their movies, like how much, we're kind of missing. And then even in the beginning, they call him a spy.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, yeah, in a way, but also like he's just a civilian that just happens to be in the right place at the wrong time a lot of times,
Yeah, right. Seriously.
And the thing about the eels, in my brain I was like, they're like snakes. That's funny.
Like
and then the
snakes
kid Teddy says it, and I was like, don't say it to him. Yeah, it was really funny.
Right.
That part was terrifying, by the way.
Well, I want to point out something too that I thought was kind of funny because you'd made mention how Phoebe's character is kind of like his character is kind of like Indiana Jones, but on the other side of the coin. You could see that when he says eels, even she's like, what? Like they're both having that same like fear reaction of like sea snakes.
Yeah, like
sea snakes.
Yeah,
even they're both just like no. So I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah,
and they're both of their reaction to certain bugs too.
Yeah, the bug callback was a really good one too.
Yeah.
I was like, like Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny.
The eels were really terrifying. Yes.
Yeah. I was like, is Ursula about to come out? Because this is terrifying.
Seriously.
Like I don't like any of this. Like it's a tight space. They have to worry about the oxygen tank, their oxygen line, and the rope. And I was like, I don't like any of this.
No.
And that first time you see the one eel and it snatches that fish and she like points at it, I was like, just leave. It's not worth it at this point, right?
Right.
You can scrum up some more details. Fuck this nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when we were watching it, I got very Last Crusade vibes from it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like, again, it's just Henry Sr. was more of the apprehensive person, so it's funny to see the older one more gung-ho and the younger one be more like, how about no? you know. But also she was like, she is the opposite of Indy. How she's more of the grave robber and the thief and the con artist. And you realize like, oh, I guess this is what happens when your head is filled with stories and knowledge, but you don't have that guiding force. You go that way. But then you get those glimpses of, she cares about people, she's very passionate about her father, has a huge resentment to Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Because of probably what happened with her father and everything like that. And then of course the caring for Teddy, as a child, amongst all this, because he's a tool, but he's like a partner in a way. And like they're simpatico, like Indy and Short Round were. Like they kind of like read each other's minds and cues, but then also like he has that like boyish curiosity of things, like he doesn't pick pockets, where like Indy obviously made Short Round more of a better person.
Yeah.
And obviously Helena did not. So little things like that. But yeah, it was just really cool. And the story was well done. They did unlike Crystal Skull, where they took this like weird, had nothing to do with anything thing, and like, oh, aliens. It's like, really though?
The other problem with Crystal Skull, and granted, I'll sit there and watch it. I'll enjoy it for what it is, but I'll nitpick it as well. Is that there's no protagonist really. There's no enemy. There's no nothing. There's no, like, yes, you do have the Russians. They're trying to get this Crystal Skull and all the power behind it, but there was really nothing that they could gain power from.
Yeah.
In the end, it was just a bunch of dead aliens that they finally went away in their spaceship at the end. There was no ultimate weapon or anything. Where like in every other movie, you had something that could make people immortal. You had something that you could, put out before an army and kill a whole entire army. Or in this one, you had the ability to go back in time and change history. Like, there are actual stakes involved in these movies, the really good ones. Again, Doom, Temple of Doom, was good in its own right, and it had its own stakes involved with the people that existed there within India.
Yeah.
Yeah. Within the surrounding area that was in, but all the rest of the good ones, the really good ones, had some sort of like, this would have ended the world. This would have done something.
Yeah.
And here you have this one man archaeologist is the only thing that really stands in the way of complete and utter evil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's this, unlike, just kind of like you were saying, Temple of Doom's great. It's fantastic. It's a really good horror adventure movie, right?
Yeah.
And but it's less globetrotty than, say, Last Crusade or Raiders of the Lost Ark, and obviously Dial of Destiny. But it's like, it's one of those things where, like, in this one, much like in the other two that have to do with Nazis, it was Indy and a few friends against the German army, the Nazis. You know what I mean? It just felt more akin to Indiana Jones, which is a fun way of doing it in a post Nazi regime world. Where like he's in a world where like that's all calmed down. It's kind of all done, right? And obviously, the Last Crusade, they were. He uncovered a plot of them trying to rebuild the Reich and blah blah blah, right, with his father and all that fun stuff. In this one, it's the same thing, but like the dude wants to go back and take Hitler's place.
Yeah.
And when he reveals that, I was like, oh no.
Right.
Like, you always thought people, you go in the past and you're gonna kill Hitler to end World War II. This dude wants to go back, kill Hitler, and take his place. And do all the stuff that Hitler did wrong, do it right. And I was like, that is terrifying.
Yeah, right.
because that's a whole different spin of like, what would you do, right? He could have gone back and advised Hitler differently, but he's like, nope, I'm gonna go back and take and replace him. I was like, that's some evil Nazi shit.
That is some evil Nazi shit.
You know what I mean? Like, that's like, you don't want to help the Fuhrer. You want to be the Fuhrer.
Yep.
I was like, no.
Mm-hmm.
Can we say pass?
Right.
Yeah, and it was just, I was like, oh, that's a whole different, because I literally thought that's what he was doing. He's gonna try, like I thought I honestly didn't think they were actually gonna, spoil alert, by the way, go actually back to the past. I thought it was gonna be one of those things like you can influence something in the past, kind of like, you know, you'd be able to send a message or something. It wasn't gonna be like full on like teleportation.
Yes.
You know.
I know what you're saying. I don't honestly know where I thought they would end up with that section of the movie, but I will say that I do enjoy what they did with that, because again, it wasn't so much of like this is a weirdly spiritual thing. This was, you know, they're still leaning more into the mathematics type of thing. Like this exists, we know it exists, we just don't know how to calculate where it goes. So I was pleasantly surprised when they put the dial together. They're not like, oh, you can just pick a date and it sends you back in time. I was like, oh, it just points you in the direction of when the next rip in time will happen. I was like, okay, that's a dope way of doing things, because you can put this thing together, but you still have to go and find where this rift is, and it's not. And this thing made by man isn't some magical thing that just opens up a wormhole to a date and time that you set on the clock. I thought that was pretty cool too. Yeah.
I also had the realization that it was not really giving you the access to any time you wanted to. It was literally to that point in time.
Yep.
Where like they needed help to win that war.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay.
Right.
Oh, this dude, he's like, nah, I don't know. Like he's like, I'm never going to be able to guess what happens beyond this point, but I just know like what's happening now. And it was like, and I legit, like when they popped out like, oh, we made it, and I was like, so Indy was wrong? I was like, so he was saying that Mao, like the Jorgen or whatever his name was incorrect in his calculations because he didn't account for the continental drift, right? But then like you show up and they're like, oh, we made it, or it's 1939 Sicily, and I was like, so Indiana was wrong?
Right.
And I was like, no, but it can't be, right? Like, he's never wrong.
Mm-hmm.
He's always the smartest man in the room. He just doesn't know he is at the time. And then it turns out, like, he wasn't wrong, but he wasn't right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that it was always going to send you back to that one point in time. And
Yeah.
I think they did a really good job at foreshadowing that, too.
Yep.
Because when you do see Archimedes' tomb, you see the watch, and someone makes the comment of, like, oh, you can see Archimedes, actually was a time traveler, because how else would you get that watch? But what you don't realize is that I think it's actually Matt Mikkelsen's watch.
He shows it because it has the same crack on it.
It has the same crack on it and everything that you're seeing it when Matt Mikkelsen is putting it on. So it's like, as Archimedes says, you were destined to be here.
Yep.
So they had already been there when this all happened.
Yep.
So they were destined to be there. For a split second there, too, I thought, oh, Indy wants to stay there. He's going to stay there. This is going to be a bittersweet thing. And he's the skeleton.
Oh, yeah.
In the tomb.
And you see Henry Sr.'s watch.
That would be Henry Sr.'s watch. I was like, oh, that'd be like tear-jerkingly bittersweet of an ending. Didn't happen like that, but it would have been an interesting way of going with the movie.
Yeah.
Totally. But yeah, I like how that they foreshadow that where he wasn't a time traveler. That it is only a thing that takes you back to that one moment in time.
Because he didn't predict where they'd be.
But it knew that's always where it meant to be. It's like a nexus point of time travel. It's a solid point in time that will never change, I guess. But it's a way of traveling back to that solid point in time.
Yeah, because he knew he knew where that one would be, and he could probably calculate for other ones, right? But he was more worried about the present time and needing help.
Yeah.
I don't think he thought it was that far forward. He didn't think 2,000 years in the future,
right?
a mechanical dragon would fly out of a hole in the sky and fucking rain death upon the Romans. He just said, hey, if I could get you to come back at this time to help us, like bring help or whatever. I thought it was a pretty cool revelation. I was like, oh.
Which another thing, if
dope.
you think about what was on the side of Archimedes' sarcophagus, crypt, whatever it is, sarcophagus. She points out that that it's some sort of bird, and he's like, well, no, it's a phoenix. It's blah 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 blah. It's known. She's like, no, it's not phoenix. And you look at it, and you're like, that kind of looks like a Reich Falcon. I think it is,
Yep.
is what they use, but it has propellers on it. And then obviously they take that big bomber through, and it's like, yeah, see, it's that thing there,
And it's on
You know,
fire.
and it's on fire. It's that their interpretation of what happened, of bringing this dragon fire thing through, this hawk, through, but it looks like it has propellers and it's on fire and this and that. It's not a dragon. It's a German bomber.
Yep.
That their interpretation of a German bomber, which I thought was pretty cool too.
Yeah, it was just a cool way of doing it, and the fact that like you were saying, a lot of it's foreshadowed with like obviously Indy talking about the invasion of Sicily, Syracuse,
Yeah.
and like how Archimedes designed all these weapons of war out of math and science because that's the only thing he knew, and then he gets to witness it, and I was like, well, there's your evidence that you spoke that we don't really have. Like, how do we know this actually happened? Blah, blah, blah. Like, and then he gets to see it with his own eyes and just kind of like a payoff in a way. But I was happy when she knocked his ass out, so he couldn't stay there.
Right.
Because like, don't stay there.
Because even then, that speaks to also what was happening to her father back then. That he was focusing on the one thing that he had and just became obsessed with it. And here we have Indy at that point in time just obsessing with the fact that he's finally in a place where he thinks that he could do much better, rather than in the present time where he's kind of basically forgotten. He's now in a place that he can do well, and he's starting to obsess over the fact that he can be there. But she's right, you can't. We've already fucked up the past enough with just our actions that were here, which were supposed to happen anyway, but nothing else is supposed to happen.
Yep.
So she, knocks some sense into him and drags him back to the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a good time, and I think it was well done. The action was really good. It played to a lot of the beats from the past movies. You have the rickshaw thingies from like the beginning of Temple of Doom. You have the train sequence like you had in both the TV show and in Last Crusade. You have the exploration part of it like you had in Raiders. With like this was underwater versus obviously in a tomb somewhere, but same thing, dead people, traps in a way, obstacles, but to your point from way earlier, the amount of on-screen death of just like bystanders,
Yeah.
but good guys in general, but also like just like at one point a pilot gets like shish kebabbed with a fucking giant
Oh, yeah.
Roman fucking dart, and I was like, what?
Yeah, right?
That wasn't like, it wasn't like, oh yeah, the pilot got killed and you don't see it. This, you see it erupt through his body, and I was like, PG-13.
Yeah, well, you can out loud some blood, just no cursing.
I was like,
As long as that pilot doesn't go fuck twice.
yeah, I was like,
G-13.
I was like, holy shit, like, because like Indy gets shot obviously, and there's like blood, right? I'm like, okay, whatever. It's not like gore blood. It's like a little bit of blood. You're allowed to have that. And then like the one dude gets run over by the car earlier, which is pretty graphic,
Right?
Dudes are getting thrown off a train. They get riddled by bullets, but you don't really see anything. It's just like they couldn't be dead. They could not be
Right.
dead. They could be alive still. Just maybe they got hurt.
Yeah.
The soft bullets shooting out of a large gun just kind of tapped them a little bit, and they fell into the snowy landscape buzzing by. But when the pilot of a plane gets literally darted by a giant metal spear, I was like, well, that's your one, I guess.
Yeah, right.
And then they show Mads all burn up in Two-Facey,
Oh, yeah, it's exactly what I was gonna call them too. Yeah.
and I was like, y'all okay with this, huh? Like,
Yeah.
that's some hard shit right there.
Or actually, no. I was thinking when that scene happened, I wasn't thinking Two Face. Sorry, I was thinking, oh look, Red Skull.
Yeah, yeah, Nazis is all burnt up. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I was like, dang, that shit's violent in like the best possible way.
Right.
Because you like Temple of Doom, like they rip a dude's heart out, like still beating heart, like like reaches like super awesome,
Kalima,
you know,
Yeah.
takes his heart out and he's like, ba 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 ba. And it's like, dang, bro, that's pretty wild. And then you're like, this one, you're like, that guy got run over by a car, and you see it. The one guy gets like impaled by like the bamboo things, and I was like, okay, that guy's dead. And there's a guy gets like Indy like implants on that tree when he's chasing the train. I was like, man, you guys are really pushing this envelope.
Character's not going to be in the sequel.
Yeah, like, you were using that render. Yeah. So I was like, oh dang, this is pretty cool. And of course the Speed-esque fight on top of the train was pretty rad too.
Yeah, that was pretty dope. I like that. By the way, I love the hat too.
Yeah.
You know, there's no way a hat staying on it.
Nah, bro, there's no way.
With on top of a train, but man, that hat just it knows who's boss.
Indy's magic, dude. I'm telling you.
He is, man. That is another thing thinking about this movie and kind of thinking about Uncharted. One of the things that the developers of Uncharted have said when making the movie or making the game is that Nathan isn't bulletproof. Nathan can die with a single shot. But the thing is that it's not a health meter that he has as you're getting shot. It's a luck meter.
Yeah.
It is how lucky he is before his luck runs out and he gets shot and killed. And that's kind of what the feeling that I get here is that Indy just has really good luck because he's like destined to have this luck. He's always seems to be missed for the most part when getting shot at or when falling off of something or jumping out of something or this or that. Like the amount of luck that he shows in this movie is astounding, but it is that Indiana Jones-ness of the movie still.
Because in all the other movies, you realize he has like his RNG is real fucking high.
Yeah.
And he's good enough, but also like that luck factor. Like he rolled a natural 20 when doing his character sheet.
Yes.
You know, and it's like, oh, plus he's got like +5 because he's got a dope hat and a whip.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but yeah, it's like, bro, I was like, so many times in this, I'm like, who is gonna die?
Right.
Because like, I don't want him to die. I don't want the kid to die. I liked him a lot. He was fun. I didn't. At first, I was like, "Oh, she's like a bad guy," and then I was like, oh, "Okay, she's just a piece of shit."
Yeah.
And I don't want her to die, right? Like that's just terrible. And then like you find out that Mutt is dead, and you're like, "Well,
fuck.
Oh, that's rough." And then you find out like that's like Indy just didn't know how to cope and like how to help his wife cope, and I was like, "This is rough."
Yeah. This is like getting older. I watch movies not to get older.
Yeah, and it's like, but it's also
enough in real life.
And then you look at it and you're like, oh, he's had so much luck in his life that not all of it is good luck.
Yeah.
You know, like certain things are out of his control, but it's like, bro, that boat scene was real rough, and I was like, I don't like this.
No, not at all.
Indy's not supposed to be a downer. He's supposed to be like, I'm Indiana Jones. Let's have fun.
Yeah.
At that point, I was like, can we get past the sad stuff and go back to finding creepy shit in creepy places?
Exactly. That's what I signed up for, not feels.
I was like, you monsters.
Yeah.
But it was, I would have to say, like, I'm so glad it wasn't as bad as everyone was saying it was. And I knew once I started seeing, like, once people started actually seeing it, like, the reviews at cans and stuff, they're all critics. I don't really care. But I saw, like, real people who I usually like to hear from, like, talk about on Twitter and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, it's a really fun time. It's, like, a throwback to, like, the, you know, Indiana Jones of lore, but, like, obviously more mature. And I was like, all right, cool. Less worried. And like I said earlier, still going into it, I had that in the back of my brain, was like, man, I just hope this is fun to watch,
Yes.
you know. But like once we got into it and like I saw what they were doing with him, and I was like, you know what? I think they really played up to where the characters, like what he'd be doing when he's older. And to your point, like showing like when he was younger and he was a hot shot and he could do whatever he wanted because they're in the age of discovery, you know. And it's that time, that capsule of time where like he could be nothing else but like who he is and what he was doing. But now we jump forward, and it's not about the past; it's about the future. And he is the past. He's now, you know, the artifact in a way, right? And he just doesn't want to give up on that. He's like, he knows there's more to discover, but people are looking the other direction now, you know. And he's like, he's the fossil, blah blah blah, right? And it's just fun to like, they did such a good job of like completing the character arc. I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
And just making it where Indy is what Indy always was, but the world has passed him up. You know, and instead of going somewhere, because obviously like he was in a place where he wasn't in a great place in his life, whatever, right? But instead of, you could see that he like faltered. You know, instead of going somewhere and find, because I'm pretty sure if Mutt didn't ever died and he was prosperous, he would have continued on being this iconic teaching figure. He would have moved on to bigger and better things. But because he doesn't, he's just this shell of a human left, right? He just stayed doing what he always did to the bare minimum, still teaching, but like he was only at that school for 10 years. Where like obviously where he was at before, he was there for years, you know, like a couple decades, and you see like how much he has fallen, and it's cool just to see, like, not cool, obviously not cool to see him falling, but it's a cool way of doing it where it's not just a redemption story, but it's like he like feels more alive as Indiana Jones than he does as Henry Jones.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I thought it was cool. I thought it was a good way of doing it.
I wanted to add that I looked up what the Rotten Tomato score of it is, and yeah, it doesn't seem like critics really cared for it. It has a 67%, which still is fresh,
yeah,
but not great. But audience score is 89%. So showing that yeah, this is something that critics are kind of panning for the most part, but it is resonating with audiences that they really do like it.
And this is one of those things where like I don't think it's gonna bring a lot of new fans into it. But if there's like families,
it might not. But like at the end, when we walked out of the theater, you saw the little kid wearing the Indiana Jones costume, holding one of the Shark Car Stones.
And that means his dad's doing the right thing. You know, he's teaching his son the right way.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Anywho.
Yeah.
I think that's it. For us.
That's all I've got.
Unless, okay, no, Joe said no.
No.
But yeah, I guess that's it for this week's episode of Comes Naturally. We have been
Joe.
I have been Cody, and as usual, you fuckers just came naturally.
Bye.
Uh-oh, something bad happened.
What do you mean?
My computer's frozen. I'm not too sure, actually, to tell you the truth. That's strange.
That's not good.
Not really. It just happened, too.
Just as yours hit and stop?
Yeah, I look up and I was like, why is Joe looking at me funny and not moving? Then I realized, no, nothing's working.
So wait, you can still hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
I mean, I can still see you. You're moving around like normal, so your computer's not frozen.
Yeah, I know. It's something weird going on. I don't know what it is. I think like visually, everything is just not